Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Since this is May the 3rd and my last published video before May the 4th, I wanted to talk about the greatest Star Wars game of all time, Star Wars Rebellion, and how it's in need for a refresh. It needs more. Whether it be a new edition, whether it be another expansion, whether it be something more for it, it definitely needs a little bit more, and I bet you that some of you might disagree, but I'm going to make my case as to why and things that it could benefit from in this video. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out some of my other Star Wars Rebellion videos. I recently did some how to play videos for Rebellion. I had done one year, like almost a decade ago, over a decade ago. Oh my, no, almost a decade ago. Wow, yeah, long time ago. And I wanted to do like an updated one, including the expansion and all of that. So I've got that. We're also doing that $25 Amazon gift card giveaway. If you want to have a chance to enter to win that, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. Let me know what you think the best Star Wars game is, and also if you have ever played Rebellion, because I'm curious how many of you agree with me. Now, I know that I often say my favorite game is Star Wars Armada, but this is the best board game. I think the best two-player board game possibly of all time. And honestly, it competes with Armada is for how good it is. It's so great. Let's talk a little bit about this game. So, Star Wars Rebellion may be a perfect game. Some of you are saying, no, it doesn't need anything else. It doesn't need anything. Leave it alone. It doesn't need anything. It's fine. It's perfectly good. It's totally cool. And I could definitely understand that because it is very close to perfect. And you know, very close to perfect isn't exactly perfect. And there's a few things that it could benefit from. Now, plenty of games have seen multiple expansions or new additions. I want to talk about the concept for some refreshes, for some expansions. Now, granted, there's a lot of ways that this game could get more. One might be in the form of like PDFs and downloads, like optional, like kind of like a rules update, errata, FAQ kind of stuff like that. They've done that with Twilight Imperium. They've done it with Twilight Imperium 4th edition, but Twilight Imperium has seen every type of update. So this one could definitely use a little bit more. Now, it may be difficult for it to get a little bit more right now because of the fact that it has plastic miniatures and it also has cardboard components. It has standees for the commanders, but it also has the ships and stuff that are all in plastic. Doesn't necessarily need a refresh on ships. It could get a cardboard only expansion. I think that would totally work. I think it could totally work to get a little bit more of stuff like this, extra liters, extra cardboard, another little sheet, like maybe an update, like a flip side, an alternate sheet, a way to change costs up and change things and change balance a little bit, like mutators. You could have some kind of mutator expansion. That's probably not what it really needs, though. Those are some easier options, I think, that would be easier for Fantasy Flight Games to do, because this still is under Fantasy Flight Games. Rebellion is not one of the titles that switched companies. Fantasy Flight Games still is the custodian of Star Wars Rebellion, although because it's sort of a hybrid in that it has both the standees that a lot of standard board games that are coming out of other Asmodee studios will have, but it also has miniatures. It might fall into an awkward category, but certainly not the only board game to use miniatures. They also had the Clone Wars Pandemic recently from Z-Man Games. You can definitely get miniatures that don't have to go through Atomic Mass Games. So Fantasy Flight could do it a lot of different ways. But the other thing is there's a lot of little things that it could benefit from regardless. If they were to come out with some other expansion or another edition or something like that, there's certain parts of the game that I think could use a quick reference cards. Like a lot of modern board games have, for one, have a better insert. So if they wanted to just do a deluxe edition of Star Wars Rebellion, would love to see a version of Star Wars Rebellion that has a fancy insert, a nice storage mechanism, a nice way to do that. Would also love to see a version that has those player reference cards. For one, your startup. Your startup is, basically every time I play this game, and I play it a lot, I always have to look at, all right, what do I start with on Empire? How many Star Destroyers? Okay, I got 3 Star Destroyers. What is it? 5 Gazantes. How many TIE fighters do I get? All right, how many ATSTs do I start off with? All of that type of stuff. Always have to reference and it's only on one page in the back of the expansion reference manual. So we were always passing that back and forth between the Rebel and the Imperial player. So detailing the setup, the order of operations, what happens first for setup, and also the turn structure, end of round, retrieve leaders, objective cards, draw mission cards, discard down to here. If it's a build turn, then when do you do that? If it's a recruit, when does that happen? Like all of those things on a card that you're not constantly checking, because the game is a little bit rules heavy and it has no player aid outside of like the rule book. So again, there's different things that a deluxe edition definitely could come with. But that's if they do a deluxe edition. Now, they've already done one expansion for the game, Rise of the Empire. This came out on the heels of Rogue One and included lots of Rogue One content. You have a couple of new ships. I mean, it wasn't only stuff from Rogue One. It wasn't only, Jabba the Hutt, for example, interdictors, Nebulon bees, all kinds of stuff like that. Well, I guess technically Nebulon bees did happen in Rogue One, but like the Golan Arms turret and stuff like that didn't happen. And so it's got stuff from Rogue One, but it's not only Rogue One stuff. So it was just an expansion to add a little more to the game. Also added some new dice, changed up some of the rules. It was a little bit of a rules update. Really went a long way towards perfecting the game, and gives you 2 sets of cards that you can play with when you're playing the game. You can play, you can play the classic game with the expansion stuff, or you can play the full-blown expansion version of the game, depending on which card subset you use, which is very cool. But one of the problems with I guess the canon of the game is that it kind of stops right on the heels of Rogue One and doesn't, like, there were no other expansions. So I'm going to make the case for some expansions. There's definitely a lot of expansion content they could do. And one of the biggest reasons I say that it needs more is because of this guy right here. Grand Admiral Thrawn really should have been in this game. It's a total strategic game. It is a master strategic game, and you really should have Grand Admiral Thrawn. And maybe he's so good that you can't just recruit him as normal. Maybe you have to play a mission card to recruit Grand Admiral Thrawn or something like that. Like maybe because the Rebels have Luke Skywalker, but they can't just get Jedi Luke. You have to get Luke Skywalker, and you have to get that mission card to train him, and then you can get Jedi Luke, right? And so maybe you shouldn't be able to just get Mithron Nurodo himself. Maybe there's a special circumstances to be able to get him. And honestly, if you're going to do that, you might as well do, all the Star Wars Rebels content. Rebels has been out forever now and never made its way into this game. And Rebels have become so iconic. They're almost like considered classic Star Wars by many at this point. They've been out for that long. So that's pretty cool. There's definitely a lot that they could add with that. But I mean, if we want to jump into more modern stuff, there's been tons of new Star Wars content that could also go into whether one or multiple expansions. All of the Disney Plus stuff, especially the Mandalorians, could play a role in this game. If you wanted to have an expansion that had Mandalorians. And they could also be expansions that are like optional modules. Like, all right, we're going to play Rebellion. We're going to play Rebellion with Mandalorians today. And it could be like each side of us can take control of some Mandalorians, and it could be a whole different mechanic. It could add different things to the game. I say that as somebody who plays this game a lot and would love to see some extra mutators. Although if you only play once every few years, you probably don't need anything new. And I get that. But if you play it a little more frequently, you're like, okay, I've figured out all the strategy. I know you. I know what you're going to do. I know what I got to do. If I get this card, I'm probably going to win. It's not that simple. It's definitely a lot more complex and nuanced than that. But I will tell you, when I play Empire, I'm going to win. Probably. And really, the Rebel victory is if it's a close win. If it's a narrow win, then that's almost the same as a Rebel victory. And Sean, if you're watching, yeah, I just punked you there because I'm always going to win when I play Empire. It's about time that you just let me play Rebellion, and then we can have a close game. So, no, but for real, there's a ton of extra content. Bad Batch, Andor had a lot of interesting stuff that would work in it. Kenobi has a few things, like a lot of Inquisitors could show up into this game. Again, the Ghost Crew Rebels, Ahsoka has stuff. Mando has stuff that could totally fit into this game. Lots of Mandalorian stuff, Bo-Katan, all kinds of cool stuff could easily fit into this game, and it could be very, very, very fun. But if expansions aren't the way to go, then I propose something beyond just a new edition or deluxe edition or an expansion. I say reboot the whole thing and make a tangent, like a side game. They've done this before, but usually it involves jumping IPs. So let's think of the game Battlestar Galactica. Conveniently enough, another Corey Connexa game. Worked on, 2 amazing games. Battlestar Galactica, they made plenty of expansions for, but then eventually lost the license. And they came out with Unfathomable, which is now in the Lovecraft world. But it's kind of the same game, mostly, for the most part. It's largely just considered a reskin. So, how do we do that here? Clone Wars, folks. Clone Wars. What if we had a whole different companion game to Rebellion? Basically a Rebellion 2.0, but it's Clone Wars. Now this is what I'm talking about. Clone Wars would be perfect. You have so much stuff that you can do from the Clone Wars, and I really think you have an awful lot to fit into a 2-player tactical game. And it could effectively be the same as Rebellion. You could use the same map. You could use all of the same mechanics, same planets and everything. You could even take this opportunity to expand the board a little bit and add more worlds, maybe a slightly larger world. Maybe if they're really daring, they want to add up, like make it more than just a 2-player game. I know that on the box it says it's a 2 to 4-player game, but if you've ever played it, it's really just a 2-player game. Unless, of course, you just like, sharing control of, with another person. It could be a 20-player game if you let 10 players alternate who gets to make decisions. So, but it's Rebels versus Empire. So if you do Clone Wars, it'd be, Republic versus Separatists. But there are some other factions you could throw in there. You could throw in Mandalore. There's definitely enough Mandalorian stuff you could do to kind of have them be like a third-party player. There's a lot of little things like that I think you could do. I think you could throw in Maul and Syndicate stuff. You could throw in Underworld, or just a basically non-aligned faction, or maybe add 2 different factions. Add Mandalore and Criminal Underworld, and Republic and Separatists. You could make it a little bit bigger, but then it's getting away. Then it's almost becoming a whole different game at that point, and that could be fine too, especially if it's a spiritual successor to Star Wars Rebellion. I think that would also really fit the bill. There's also a way they could make it less of a spiritual successor and more of just a straight rebranding. And I thought of something. There's so many really cool Clone Wars vehicles that could go into this game. What if they do come out with, a Clone Wars Rebellion? It wouldn't be called Rebellion, right? It'd probably be called, like, For the Republic or something like that. Right? Suppose they call it that. And they come up with a Empire Day expansion or something like that. And the idea here is, if you play this expansion, you're playing these guys versus the Separatists at the end of the war. And hear me out. Suppose you start out with, all of your Venators and all of your Lucre Hulks and all that stuff, but you can't make any more. Or maybe after turn 2 or something like that, you can't make any more. And then what happens is it becomes the Empire after X number of turns, like maybe after turn 2 or turn 3. Now the Empire's making Star Destroyers, and they're making other stuff. And there's a trade-off, because maybe they're more expensive to make, or maybe you got to make 2 Venators for 1, square blue or something like that, and now you only get 1 Star Destroyer, and so like they're more expensive, but but then maybe these guys work for battle cards or for special stuff, or maybe your clones work for special command cards, and you're like, you want to be careful, like I don't want to waste my resources. I want to see if I can save a Venator till like late game, because then it still allows me to play like a power card if I still happen to have a legacy Venator still in service by the end of the game, if I'm playing with that transition from Clone Wars to modern day Rebellion era. I think something like that has a lot of potential. It could be very, very cool. And there's also a lot of stuff that's crossing over. You can have clone commandos in there. You can have the Bad Batch. They definitely filter right into the middle, right? Like they cross both sides. So I feel like there's a lot of different possibilities for different things that they could do with Rebellion. without necessarily having to make another expansion, although I would be happy with anything. I'd be happy with a second edition of Rebellion that keeps everything that we love, kind of fix it. There has been a couple of bugs. There's a couple of niche cases where there's some FAQs and some questionable rulings. So they could address all of those little FAQs that have come up through the years, add a few extra things. Like if you wanted to add Thrawn, but without having to add a whole nother expansion, then you could do a second edition and just be like, hey, you know what? We're adding like, 3 or 4 new commanders. That's it. Maybe a couple of extra cards and little balance tweaks, and that could be about it. Or a deluxe edition that redoes the same game, deluxeifies the game a little bit, slightly bigger game board, or maybe a neoprene mat. I wouldn't mind a slightly larger game board. Sometimes when you're having larger battles, those little squares, the areas are a little small. So it'd be cool to have that option. But also like the player aids, a better insert. There's just some quality of life things that that a game that was made so long ago could benefit from, like a deluxe edition. And I think that could be cool. You don't have to really change the gameplay much to do a deluxe edition. Usually you're upgrading the components and upgrading the player experience. And then, if you're launching a deluxe edition, you could also sell like a optional play mat along with it and things like that. So I think that also works, but also really like the idea of a Clone Wars version of Star Wars Rebellion that's, you call it something else, and but it plays the same, and, well, it has the same basic rules, but because it's Clone Wars, that allows you to, upgrade the strategies a little bit, because maybe the Separatists aren't hiding the Rebel base. Maybe they've taken Chancellor Palpatine hostage, and you have to find Chancellor Palpatine, and that's, same mechanic, kind of, but since the Separatists are a little bit more formidable with the Lucre Hulks and their Munificence and all of the Recusants and the Providences, and oh my gosh, and then they had, of course, the Malevolence. You could do, there's a lot of things like that. So the balance of power between the two factions could be very different, and that could change the way you play a little bit. So a Clone Wars game would definitely be like a spiritual successor, but not necessarily replicating or replacing the mechanics and the strategy that go into Star Wars Rebellion. I'd love to see anything like that. Let me know if any of these ideas resonate with you. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. You can also join our Discord and keep the discussion going there, because I do love this game so very much, and I really would love to see more. It was, and I remember the day I bought it, I wasn't even sure. I'm like, man, I don't even know if I'm going to like this game. It just came out, though, and the store has it right here. Oh, what the heck? I'll pick it up. And it changed my life forever. So I have great memories of this game, and I still continue to make more great memories of this game. I have purchased 2 copies of this game and 2 copies of the expansion for silly reasons. Like I didn't sleeve it initially, and totally like all of the starter cards were getting rubbed raw from all the from constant play, and it was very easy to tell, oh, you used the starting mission under that person, and I bought a separate copy. But then I had to buy a separate copy of the expansion because I wanted all the new cards, because I was going to sleeve them all, and I wanted them all to match. And then I also, the other benefit of that is I got a second set of dice, because I hated the idea of sharing dice. And that's another thing that a deluxe edition should come with. Should come with twice as many dice, so that you, your side and the opposing side can have their own dice, and you don't have to share them back and forth. I think that's a great idea. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. I will talk to you guys later. Hopefully you have a great weekend. Happy May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And, it's pretty cool stuff. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are superstars. Thank you so much for your continued support. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. And always wash your socks.